We'll just give it a couple of minutes to let people all kind of come in and
Yeah.
sign up for me.
Mm-hmm.
Here. This is the part where you either need a joke or a song or something to. Oh,
Yeah. Give it a few seconds.
absolutely. It's always good to have some people punctual waiting there for it to start. But there'll be some people just finishing meetings and running into space for this.
Yeah.
Just give it 1 minute and then we'll be able to start going. Okay, talk amongst yourselves in the meantime.
Hopefully people are eating their lunch at the moment.
Absolutely.
Right, we'll kick off.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah, go for it.
cool. So, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks very much for taking the time today to join us in this our next series, next in the series of our short webinars. I'm Tommy, and I look after partnerships here at Vidatec, and I'm joined by Ross, our CEO. So, today we're digging into a topic that keeps coming up in conversations with travel and leisure leaders. It's the post-booking void. So that strange kind of silence between what happens after a customer clicks pay and before actually arriving at your door. Thanks very much in advance for the questions that some of you have already sent in. We'll do our best to answer them during the session. And if we don't, we'll definitely follow up after the session and make sure everything's addressed. Um,
I'm just saying that one, Tommy, as well. Obviously, the way this is set up is that it's you and I talking to each other. But if people have got questions or they've got stuff they'd like us to delve in a little bit more, please feel free just to put that in the chat, and we'll react to that as we go along, just to make sure people get what they need out of today's session.
yeah, perfect. So I suppose before we jump into that, we could take a wee minute to introduce Vidatech. To those of you who maybe don't know us and are joining us for the first time. So you can see the slide for the slide there. We're a purpose-driven business. So it's important to us that the clients we work with and the solutions, the digital solutions we design and deliver are about using technology to improve the human experience. Basically making life better for people. That's what drives and motivates us. That's also reflected in the people that we're proud to work with. So you can see for this kind of random selection of our clients that we're just as happy to work with a global multinational or a quirky startup to help them get funding. So let's dive in with a question, get everybody thinking. So if you could just fire into the chat your answer. So how often does your typical user book with you? Once a month, once a year? It'd be good to know that just to kind of open the chat.
It'll be interesting to see this, Tommy. Obviously, part of the work we do, we will work with travel companies who have one booking a year, where they're trying to engage a customer around. And we'll have some people where it's multiple visits a month, multiple visits a week, etc. So obviously, just thinking about the touch points and making sure that we can, make sure when we're talking about different touch points, we're making it relevant to the different businesses because it's all different types of things that we need to consider depending on exactly what sector you're in. Are you in a travel company? Are you a leisure unit, etc.? All those type of things. So we just want to try and make it as relevant as possible from stuff today. So we've
That's
got,
absolutely right, Ross. I mean, the booking journey can start, I mean, literally the day after the last experience, or the minute you check out.
yeah,
It can start months before, weeks before, or even days before, depending on the type of activity or the experience. I suppose the key thing is about what you do as soon as that booking's complete, and that's kind of where the opportunity lies.
yeah. So we've got some stuff in the chat there in terms of uh, we've got from once a week to kind of once a year, and we don't know. So there's quite a spectrum here in terms of the people that are on the call. So we get some people it's 5 or 6 times a year, etc. as well. So there's a real spectrum there that we can make
Sounds
sure we
like
try,
it.
try and cover off.
Sounds like it. So the definition of a journey has changed. So for today's customer, a journey is no longer just defined solely by how they get from A to B. It's about how they feel, where they stay, and then what they do. However, definitely in our conversations, we're seeing a massive disconnect in the industry. Too many brands, the relationship effectively ends when the customer checks out, or when the customer physically checks out of your property. We see high demand and high engagement, sorry, during the research phase, but as soon as the payment's taken, there's often radio silence until the guest arrives. We're treating travel, accommodation, and leisure as separate transactions rather than one fluid experience. So this silence is where you lose the customer's attention and potentially their loyalty. You anything to add to that, Ross?
No, I mean, I think it's interesting, and obviously there's that bit about inspiration before there's consideration, before there's booking, and the webinar today is mainly talking about booking to the event and then post-event. But there's a bit for me in terms of I was talking to a business recently, um, where they do like leisure breaks, and essentially they were only focused on the booking, and there was no more engagement until they'd had the experience, and then the simple mechanic was a percentage discount for your next booking. And they were missing all that opportunity between the weeks. I think it was something like 8 weeks before, typically, on average, people were booking. They're moving all that time to kind of excite and look at where's the potential to provide a better experience, upsell activities, whether that be like spa treatments or whether it be food and drink, etc. Missing all that opportunity and out the loop. So now it's trying to work with them to understand how do they close that gap and where the revenue opportunities. And rather than just increasing the discount as a rebook, what are the other ways to build loyalty and bring people back in, which I think's important. But there's so many touch points along that journey where you could be engaging with a customer in a better way to build brand loyalty than just waiting until they've had the experience, I would say.
Next one. So you mentioned that gap. How do we fill the gap? Um, so the answer's already in people's pockets. For many guests, a smartphone's replaced the travel agents, replaced the concierge, replaced the ticket wallet, and a lot of the times it's also replaced the customer service desk. The stats are clear. 70% of travellers prefer to use mobile apps to plan and book trips. 63% prefer mobile apps for managing those trips. So if you've got a mobile experience and it's just a booking engine, you're kind of missing the point. Customers are wanting a single digital joined up experience that brings together booking, payment, and access. This is your primary channel now to engage them during that silent period. Do you agree with that, Ross?
I think so. I mean, I think there's a craft to this, right? And it's going to be different for different businesses. But I'll give you a couple of examples. I always think stories help kind of sell the concept. Um, I talk about content and context, and that's what's the right time to be promoting what to a customer. And obviously, there's ones here. You've got Tommy in terms of hotel booking, etc. Now, if I think about EasyJet, and I'm a big fan of EasyJet, so I'm not slagging them off, I'm a big fan of their app for a while. But one of the things that happens is, regardless of if I pick leisure or I pick business, it still feeds me through the same loop. And when I'm just trying to book the flight, I know that's all I want to do. There's a lot of friction to go through. Do you want your seats? Do you want your luggage? Do you want car hire? Do you want to do like that kind of journey? So it's just trying to think about for your situation, what's the right time to be offering anything like here, like upgrades or meals or whatever. And it's maybe not just at that point of booking. It's maybe about how do you engage from there onwards. And that point of booking is not the measurement of lifetime value. And I know we've had customers in the past that the only point they wanted, and I can understand why, particularly in COVID times, was that ability to book through a mobile experience. But now there's that opportunity to extend that out and look at how do you get 70, 80% more spend from people through that ongoing engagement rather than just that one booking silo experience, essentially. That makes sense, Tommy?
Absolutely. So this is where technology shifts from being an operational tool to a revenue engine. Um, we often hear that automation kills the personal touch, but data says the opposite. So 65% of our travellers now actually prefer brands that are using AI-driven personalisation. Why is that? Because it reduces friction. AI enables dynamic offers that shorten the path to booking and allows for targeted upselling of experiences instead of just sending a generic welcome email. AI will allow you to present the right offer, like a room upgrade or a dinner reservation, at the exact moment the customer's thinking about their itinerary. It helps move customers forward rather than overwhelming them with choice. What's your thoughts on that, Ross?
I mean, I think if you the previous slides where you're talking about, mobile, and you gave some stats earlier around how important mobile is as like a booking journey and stuff at this moment in time. I think there was like one really simple use case for us that we came across with a tour operator where they used to have reps on the buses going from the airport to the resort, and in that time from the airport to the resort, they would sell additional services, and bookings for things. Now that was 27 million pound of revenue they were getting through that, which is kind of staggering. Then through COVID, they lost that ability to sell. So all of a sudden there was a 27 million pound hole in their revenue. So mobile was a key way to be able to speak to them around how do you engage the customers and not lose that upsell capability. But they're able to then use the staff in the right way, which I know we'll come on to in a little bit. So it's a bit around the mobile experience, being able to kind of upsell in the right way. I think here it comes back to the point I made a couple of minutes ago about content and context. And this is where like that real personalization is key. So not just understanding what do you want to sell, right? And I think Amazon's a great example of being able to say people like you have liked this, right? Type thing. But really getting to understand how to communicate with you and what the preferences are. And how do you get that kind of dynamic piece, which is understanding I'll be very different going to London as a business traveller than I would be going to London as a family or with some friends. So it's about building up that contextual awareness of what the user's trying to achieve, rather than just being the slightly blunt instrument of the way push notifications can be sometimes a bit generic and bland. So how do you inspire greater calls to action essentially to drive that revenue would be where we're trying to see AI. And I know we'll talk about it in a minute, but AI is not the answer to everything. It's part of the solution. It's not the silver bullet that's going to change everything, but it
Yeah,
allows you to be more personalized in how you do that, as well as being able to delve deeper into the either the feedback or the data that you're capturing as well.
nice one. So we know well that lots of teams are under immense pressure to do more things with less people. Staffing challenges are real, manual processes are expensive. So connecting your digital journey isn't just about selling more, it's also about operational survival. Probably more valid now than ever. So real-time data allows you to manage capacity and staffing more effectively. And then when you implement tools like digital keys or seamless check-in, you reduce queues, lower operational costs. So this means that the staff that you have can then spend their time less on admin and more on those high-value interactions that build loyalty. What do you think about that, Ross?
I think this is a kind of interesting space for me. And again, it links back to that AI conversation a second ago. I think what's really important here is we're kind of human in the loop in the center of this in terms of what's the right thing for the right person, because your customers are going to be different. And who wants that frictionless mobile experience, but who wants maybe that VIP attention? So one I always talk about here, Tommy, is when I go on holiday, I've gone to the same resort for a number of years for my golf trip with the guys. Now, their idea of five-star service when you arrive at that hotel is to give you champagne and strawberries and sit you down and talk to you, right? I couldn't care less about that stuff, right? I would pay more just to do a pre-check-in and get my key or get taken straight to the room and that's it, right? So what's the five-star service? Who wants that kind of experience where they're getting in and made to feel special? And who just wants to be able to go and do their own thing? So there's a way that you can reduce queues and experiences when you arrive at venues, etc., through that self-check-in piece. There's a way you can do that digital self-service to manage your bookings and all that kind of stuff. And allow your people, we're all trying to do more with less, and AI is an enabler of that, but focusing on where they're there for the right thing. And I think for me, whilst we are obviously talking from a digital perspective, Tommy, and that's what we do for a living, there's a bit where do you design the journeys so that you've got that human experience where you need it, or the ability for somebody to come out of that digital loop to speak to someone. And I think there's plenty of good examples out there, as in good examples of bad examples of where people get stuck in a loop and they can't speak to someone and gets really frustrating. And even a simple one for me, there's a restaurant that I use quite a lot where you can go online and book your reservation, but you can't amend it. You need to either phone them or pop in to change that booking. And that's really frustrating in terms of if I'm booking for six people and all of a sudden it's seven or it's five, and you want to let the restaurant know, that should be a frictionless experience. And it's actually stopped me using them sometimes because, there's a bit of volatility sometimes when you go out with groups of friends. So it's things like that, thinking about how do you get that right self-service to free up your people? Because they want to be serving guys in the restaurant rather than taking phone calls from people trying to think about what's
Yeah.
happening next Friday. It's simple things like that that, really trying to think about how do you design your services in a way that supports the customer journey that you want to create. And I guess the other thing on top of this is we've seen elements of this where people have taken maybe one of those, like say that reduced queues element, Tommy, and have just tried to fire an AI solution in there into that slice, but have not considered the whole journey. And
Yeah.
it becomes really frustrating and fragmented because you need to consider the whole picture rather than the individual parts of the journey to be able to make it a better experience for any of your customers.
Perfect. So I suppose what does success look like in 2026? I think if you look at our travel and tourism white paper, like plug there, it's going to be on our website and we'll share a link for that later. But we maybe need to stop measuring success just by the amount of bookings that have been made. We need to maybe look at measure success in lifetime value. So that requires looking at that full customer journey, as you said, including leisure, on-site experiences, and ensuring that we're designing for loyalty, not just for the transaction at that time. So if we close the gap between booking and experience, that's when revenue flows. Do you agree with that? Or is there anything you would add to that list?
Add to that list, I think there's probably just a couple of things I would say. You've got here in terms of mapping that full customer journey, but what are you going to do to implement there? Where are you strong? Understanding where, you've got that great experience, or maybe where it's a bit more functional and a bit clunky, or where you're across multiple channels and you're seeing that drop off. That's definitely something there to consider. Uh, and I think the other bit is where's that connection between the human and the digital experiences that we're talking about. So plenty of people will go to the cinema just now, for example, and probably won't speak to a human type thing as part of that experience, maybe just checking the ticket as you go through. But they're able to go in, get their tickets, have their food and drink order to pick up, etc. There's not really that much engagement. So, where's the opportunity to have more of that type of seamless experience versus where do you want to add it in? Um, we do have kind of one question that's popped up as we're talking through those metrics, Tommy. And that's a good question. I think it would be good to look at this through your lens as well. So the question is about how can you make people feel like a VIP if they're not part of like a loyalty program or they've not been a regular visitor to that attraction or that place. And I guess from your perspective, one on one extreme, you've been going to the same hotel location for 20 odd years, and you're part of that VIP scheme there, versus you probably want an experience similar to that when you go other places because as far as you're concerned, you're spending money with them, you want to be treated well, etc. So, have you got any thoughts around how do you make sure that you're dealing with people in the right way at that point?
But I think so. Certainly from a digital journey, I know a lot of people. If you go into an experience with a business that you've never used before, you don't have an account there, you don't have a login, etc. So how does the company that they are try to curate an experience for you? And I suppose it's about maybe looking at like simple things like if you've got a cookie having been to the site before, like welcoming you back. If you've came from maybe a competitor brand's website or a different area of the site before, so we can see the kind of area that you've came from. I suppose it's about taking every opportunity to ask the question to get something. So if it's downloading the app, then looking for some personalization questions at the start. How would you like this experience to be personalized for you? So if you don't know the answer to the question, maybe just ask it. So can we help like personalize for you? I think there's some great statistics about that people are quite happy to give up some of their personal information in return for curated personalized experiences. So
Mm.
sometimes, especially in tourism and leisure, where it's a nice experience, people are quite happy to give up their personal information if it means that they're getting a more personalised, curated, and potentially VIP experience. So I would say that. I would say if you don't know it, I think it's okay to ask.
I think there's opportunities you say to engage in that way, but there's also a bit like building your data. So where are you seeing the calls to action being converted? Where are you seeing people clicking through in content? And that can start to build that picture. Now, even if you've not got a loyalty program or you're not identifying that individual user through an email address, there's still like that device element. So if you're a meta organization, what can you do to track that over time? That stuff we've done with a few organizations
Yeah,
because we typically see having to take a different approach. So one of the organizations we work with, they've got people who go every week, but a big part of their success is overseas travelers coming in and spending money at the same time. So that tends to be, a once a year or once a lifetime type drop. And we've got to design the digital experience that caters for both of those different elements. So it's trying not to have a one size fits all approach or putting people into one bucket from a fairly bland type of categorization.
yeah,
It's really about understanding that personalization and having some set kind of customer profiles and routes you want to take, but also building on top of that with that data and the personalized information that can drive the right experience for that individual. And again, be flexible so that, like I said, on that trip to London, it might be different what I'm looking for going for a business trip versus going with family or friends. So how do you make sure that your digital experience allows for that rather than, so many times, as I think I said earlier, the EasyJet piece, it doesn't make a difference if I tick that I'm going for business or leisure to then what follows for me as an experience. It might be great data for the organization to capture for the customer, but what are they doing that makes that a worthwhile experience for me?
brilliant.
That makes
Um,
sense.
just to round this off, this is again a little nugget from the end of our white paper. Technology is not the goal, better journeys and stronger relationships are. So, um, yeah, what's to think about?
Is there anything that you would say? I mean, obviously you've got a little bit in the kind of white paper around simply having an app isn't just quite good enough, and what does experience look like going forward? Have you got any thoughts around that piece and where, particularly mobile as an ever increasing part of a kind of leisure and tourism type experience fits in? Any additional thoughts around that, Tommy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've kind of touched on elements of it as throughout the chat. I think expectations are so high nowadays. So I think people are looking for that Netflix or Amazon experience in everything that they do. And I think having a mobile app kind of is the kind of device to the key to unlock that. So it's a device which people have on their person constantly. We've seen the statistics about how it's the preferred mode of booking, etc. So um, you kind of have to use that to if you're going to use that as your primary channel then to communicate with that customer. And I think we've seen people doing it really well. Obviously, you mentioned EasyJet and about how the experience isn't potentially that good for you, but the flip side of that could be people like Jet2, for example, who obviously they push you towards their app because with the like book through the app and you get the best offer, great. But then they bring you back to it constantly because that's where all your holiday documents are. That's where you would pay your installments if you're paying it up. That's where they push you to buy um, upgraded seats or add like meals on your flight, etc. So they're constantly engaging with you between the point that you've made your booking or you've researched your booking and before you even arrive on site. And then when you're on site in the resort, they don't need the rep anymore. They have almost like a better rep by having that complete encyclopedic knowledge of everything in the resort, everything in the establishment. I think nowadays, if you don't have an app that is more than just a booking engine, I think you're definitely missing out. Your guests are definitely missing out.
Obviously, we asked people at the start where they sat in terms of number of visits from people or number of bookings a year, kind of per customer. And we've got the extremes from, a few times a month, a few times a week type stuff to once a year. And I think that's created some challenges for us where maybe customer apps haven't had that full service and it's been about a booking or it's been about one small slice. And the one thing I'd always say is be very clear about what the purpose of your app is. Whether that be about, it is to get to point of booking, it is about being revenue generating, or it's purely about servicing and reducing, as you said there, Tommy, the kind of rep in the resort type of scenario. But what we've seen from a number of customers who've got mobile apps in different companies is if it's a once a year type thing, they'll maybe download the app for that period. And then as soon as they come back, they're competing for space on the phone. So it's one of the first things to get deleted and come off. So I think if you've got a kind of longer kind of consideration to booking or a longer period from booking to next booking, I think there's a big part to consider here around what's that connection and how do you build loyalty through a digital experience in between rather than just coming off. Now, a simple thing we did recently, Tommy, which I think is going to be really important this year, is we built an arcade game for somebody within the mobile app.
Yeah.
It's not something we've typically done in the past, but it was a great way for them to build loyalty and keep that app alive for a longer period of time in people's phones, while they build out some of the other capabilities. So those are the kind of things and tips that you can look at to go, how can we keep people connected rather than just be a deleted app that gets downloaded again every year?
I think, Ross, you'll remember we spoke to a leisure client last year and they came up with the brilliant concept of that couch to couch. So it was like sitting on the couch, thinking about the booking, making the booking, obviously all the pre-sales activity and all the kind of warming up to actually arriving at the experience, then supporting them during the experience, then allowing them to book things while they're there, and but then just as important was the post experience. So when they go back to the couch, about do you remember you had a great time that day? Do you remember you did this? Here's some photographs of the day. Um, it's time to book again. It was brilliant. It was a great concept, and the kind of circular diagram that they came up with and were helping them deliver has really resonated with me, and it's a great one for it's a great kind of synergy across all travel and tourism, I think.
I think that's fair, and I think one of the kind of final points I wanted to make sure we covered off to today, Tommy, is there'll be people as part of the call who have got legacy systems, and they might be doubting what's the capability there. So that conversation you're talking about was with a greenfield client, a brand new business setting up, and able to design a solution from end to end at the beginning, right? Not every organization's in that space. You've got revenue that's been booked through different channels and stuff just now for the people that are on this call. So I think one of the things to think about is what is the current capability you've got? Where's your CRM? What are you using for email marketing? All that stuff. But not to be hindered by thinking about the constraints of what your systems might have. There are ways and means to be able to kind of fill that void in the short term. It might not give you the full experience you want to deliver, but as a pathway towards it. So it doesn't need to necessarily be we need a full CRM replacement type thing,
Yeah.
and this is going to take 3 years before we can get to it. I think we've always got that piece that we talk about at Vidatec is kind of start small and build. But there's ways that we can plug the gaps through digital solutions, and some of it's off shelf that the guys can go and look at themselves from other suppliers. But how do you add payment in? How do you add personalization? So where are the integrations that can bring together that full experience rather than having to feel like it's a massive outlay from a kind of architecture infrastructure perspective? So I think that's always one thing we want to leave people with is, you don't have to start big. You don't need to have the massive budgets. Great if you do, great if you've got the all-powerful CRM that you can harness effectively, but it's about what's right for your business and the right size and how do you fill the gaps in the meantime.
Yeah, I think absolutely right, and I think the best success stories that we've seen are from customers who've just got something out there. So recognise that they need an app, get something out there, start utilising maybe siloed data in a particular CRM system and using it and leveraging it to present some offers. And then almost like the product backlog for the app writes itself. So your customers are telling you what they want to do. You can start to see from their behaviours and the journeys where they drop off or where they might be looking for something else to be pushed to them. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It doesn't need to be a 3 year project or a digital transformation project. It can be even with siloed data and several places, it can be pulled together and leveraged and to create a joined up experience for your guests.
Okay, I'm conscious of time.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if there's any other questions anybody's got in the chat. Please feel free to put them in and we'll either address them now or any questions that have been asked in the chat, we'll make sure we kind of send out as part of a little pack to everyone who's joined the call afterwards. Any final words for you, Tommy?
No, just my details are there and there's a QR code there as well. But I'll make sure everybody who was on the list and on the invite list and who signed up today will get an email to thank them for their time and a link to the white paper that we've referred to several times and seriously plugged, and potentially a recording as well of today's webinar if they want to share it with colleagues.
Right. No, listen, thanks to everyone who's attended. I hope you found it useful. We always try and get these things where it's hints and tips and give you some practical stuff to go away and look at. It's not about necessarily trying to promote an ideal state, and everybody's got a different position. So, if there's anything we can do to support your thinking along the way, then please just get in touch. But Tom, I've had fun talking to you about this. It's something we can talk about
Absolutely.
we
Yeah,
could do a 35-minute webinar for the next 6 months around each of those individual touch points on the journey. But hopefully that's been useful for the people, and I've certainly enjoyed it anyway.
you too. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Cheers.